Rudy, I tell you what,
empty.
I tell you what, I agree with that, because when I drove down to Dover the first time when the police knocked on my door, there was no one on the road at all. So, Rudy, you want to see Dominic stay, yeah?
Absolutely, because I think, right, it's going to be worse for us if he goes, because at the crucial period we got with Brexit now, I think it would be more of a catastrophe if he went,
Rudy, that's my worry. That's my worry, but something tells me, Rudy, I could be wrong, but something tells me that somehow Cummings isn't going to survive this. Rudy, thank you very much indeed for your call. Let's go to Joy in Newtown, Wales. Another new caller. Joy, good morning.
Hello.
Good morning. So, essential journeys only.
Yeah, I'm just very disappointed. At the end of the day, he's one of the main lawmakers, and people's perception, whether it was right or wrong, public perception is what counts, and we've been told that we've got to stay in. And one of the adverts you've just played, literally before in the break, was a government advert. Actually says, "Do not leave your home." If you're showing any signs of symptoms, and then he can drive all that way, breaking their own rules. And I'm really gutted about it. I've got a brand new grandchild. Yep. I'm not allowed to go and cuddle him. I'm not allowed to go and hold him. I'm not the only one. There's many, many people who have brand new grandchildren. And we've been told that we're not allowed to go, even though we've been self-isolating. We're not ill, but we're not allowed to go and cuddle it. It's not just the effect on
grandchildren, Joy, but equally, Joy, at the other end of the scale, people with sick or dying relatives.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, some of whom have not even been able to attend funerals.
Exactly, and this is really hard on the public that are in the majority, sticking to the rules.
Yes.
Standing by what they're supposed to do. Okay, we all know that some people break the rules, but if you're a lawmaker, the actual person that's standing up in front of us on the telly, constantly telling us what we should do. Mm-hmm. And then you break it because you want to go up to family to stay there, so that just in case they need to look after your child. But at the end of the day, could they not have come down if they'd have got so ill? Then that would have perhaps justified them coming to look after your child.
I can hear the frustration bordering on anger in your voice, and I think it's shared by quite a few people. Joy, thank you very much indeed. Now, look, we've not been able to locate our pro-democracy activist in Hong Kong. That's not surprising. It's been a day of protests and tear gas. Back in 1997, we handed Hong Kong over to China. You may remember Chris Patten was the governor there at the time. And the promise was that until 2047, China would allow Hong Kong to have autonomy. There have been some new laws passed by the Chinese government, and Chris Patten himself says, this is a comprehensive assault on the city's autonomy, rule of law, and fundamental freedoms. The integrity of one country, two systems hangs by a thread. And it's another example, in my view, of China becoming more and more authoritarian. I thought they'd leave Hong Kong alone on the basis that actually, economically, it was jolly important to China. But it appears they've really stepped things up. It appears there will be almost unlimited powers of surveillance that will go to the Chinese authorities. I think it casts a very, very big shadow over Hong Kong's economic future. And I suspect that many of those pro-democracy activists will be very worried for their futures and even thinking whether they're going to stay in Hong Kong. So I'm sorry we couldn't go directly there, but that's what's going on. Normally, it'd be a big story. Normally, the fact that the Sunday Times tell us dither and delay led to the deaths of thousands, that would be a huge story today. Another big story is what's happening in the middle of the English Channel. I'm going to speak in a minute to a former boss of the Border Force to ask him about what I saw this week in the English Channel, something that frankly made me pretty angry. But it's 11:30 and it's time for the news with Bill Overton. A senior security consultancy. He recently appeared before the Commons Home Affairs Committee and told them he could not see an immediate end to the crisis in the Channel. I'm very pleased to say that Tony Smith joins me live right now. Tony, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
So there I was, innocently out there in the middle of the Channel fishing the other day. And what I saw, Tony, confirmed rumours that I'd been picking up, and it made me very, very angry, because what I saw was a French naval vessel shadowing a small inflatable dinghy out of French waters, just straight over into British waters, and I then watched Border Force driving up, picking up the migrants, and the skipper of the Border Force vessel saying to the French Navy, "Thank you for your assistance." And I couldn't work out, Tony, what made me angrier. Was it that the French, despite the 60 million quid we've spent and given them to prevent this from happening, was it the fact that they were behaving like this, or was it complicity of our own Border Force? And I really, I want to know from you as a former boss, how long has this been going on?
Yeah, Nigel, I saw your report and also, subsequent reports on Sky News about this this phenomenon, which I have to say I wasn't aware of that, Nigel.
Well, how do you feel about it, Tony?
Well, I think your listeners need to understand a couple of things, Nigel, if I may. I mean, firstly, there's only so much the UK government can do unilaterally on this. The laws of the seas are hugely, hugely complicated. And what we need, which is what I've been advocating from day one, is a new bilateral agreement with France. Now, we already have several bilateral agreements with France, going from Sangatte to Canterbury to Sandhurst. And that, Nigel, is what allows us to check passports, to check lorries, to check vehicles on the French side in Calais. And believe me, if we hadn't been doing that for the last 15 years, things would have been disastrous on the internet.
I get that.
So the smugglers have adapted their tactics. And when I first heard this, and I spoke to you about it at the time, I honestly thought it was only a flash in the pan. Those are really, as you know, tricky waterways, busy shipping lanes, currents, etc. We did not see this as a threat in my time or even for some time after. But it is now becoming a new normal. And so unless we can get that new agreement in place. The other point, Nigel, is, the Dublin Convention is the safe third country, a framework, as you know, that exists within the EU for who's going to deal with an asylum claim. Now, we're leaving the EU, as you know better than anybody else. We're leaving the EU. So what will be the new normal for, say, third? And a safe third country agreements work all over the world, where you can instantly, regardless of where people are picked up, if you have a safe third country agreement, once you've established people are safe and well, they would be returned instantly to the point of disembarkation. We don't have that, Nigel, and that's why I think you're seeing what you're seeing.
Tony, I completely understand the need to be fully free of EU rules. That'll make our lives easier. But I return to my question, because when I asked the Home Office why it was acceptable, after all this money we've given them, for French naval vessels to pick up these ribs, often not far from the French coast, and escort them all the way across to the midpoint in the Channel, the Home Office response was that these migrants don't want to return to France, so it's too difficult for the French Navy to... I mean, if the French Navy can't deal with a rib with 10 or 20 migrants on, what is the point of them?
Yes, and again, you highlight a really serious problem about interdiction on the high seas. And so another thing I've been calling for is that we do need to look at capabilities for interdiction on the high seas. It's a very different set of affairs, Nigel, to bring people on board who are compliant and are happy to board your vessel. You know you were out there. But if you see people deliberately resisting any desire, particularly with women and children in very small dinghies, say, well, I'm not coming aboard, then what are you going to do? I mean, people could end up in the sea. There could be drownings and there will be huge inquiries. So I think the top priority for us and the French is to preserve life and limb. The difficulty we have is that the migrants themselves are being told by the smugglers do resist any attempt by any French vessel to pick you up, because then you will be brought back here. What you need to do is keep going. They won't do it because they're scared to for health and safety reasons, they're scared to bring you on board. But we do know once you get to a British vessel, they will pick you up. But the ultimate point, Nigel, is that when we do pick them up, because of what I said earlier about the jurisdictions, they are within our jurisdiction. We have no choice but to return them to France. And so what we need this agreement to be a term. And also we do need to look at things going on in Australia. They've got lots of experiences, US Border Patrol, huge amount of learning from other countries. I did some of this when I was doing the Olympic border security down in Portsmouth, where we had the police, the Navy, the Coast Guard, the Border Force, all testing scenarios. Now, I know it's security rather rather than migrant smuggling. But the same principle applies, and I really think we do need to look at what our own capability is and take in learning from some of these that have dealt with this before, much, much greater pressures than we've got here so far. But I am really worried about it, Nigel. Yes, of course I am.
Yeah, well, I've picked up some rumours in the last 24 hours that we may see some change of tactics from Border Force in the English Channel this week, and I certainly hope so. Tony, as ever, thank you for joining us, and huge pressure now. Priti Patel coming under huge pressure to do something about this. A lot of Tory MPs not happy. Very large numbers of people in the country furious about what's going on, and yet you'll never see that on the BBC Evening News. Oh, good Lord, no, that's all far too difficult. Right, back to, is Cummings going? Of course this matters. The rumour Number 10 won't sack Dominic Cummings is because they're too scared to deal with everything without him. Pathetic, really. Shame on the government. I'm livid, says Luke in Muswell Hill. If someone from government can't tell me why Dominic Cummings gets to be above the law by the end of a day... This is actually very interesting. If someone from government can't tell me why Dominic Cummings gets to be above the law by the end of the day, I may just say screw lockdown and drive and see my partner tomorrow morning for the first time since the start of lockdown. George, you know, I'm not reading that out because I want to incite people to break lockdown. I'm reading it out because I suspect there are quite a lot of people this morning thinking, I have done my bit. How dare they behave differently? James in Hemel Hempstead is a new caller. James, good morning.
Hi, Nigel, and thanks for taking my call. I appreciate that. Great show. That's very interesting, that last message.
Well, isn't it?
Yeah, and it feeds into one of the points that I just wanted to briefly make about this, and I'm interested to see what you think of this. First of all, I think the fundamental point here is that Dominic Cummings is not only putting at risk the lives of those that he immediately comes into contact with, but the greater, wider community by surely setting a really poor example. And I think that's what I find troubling about this. It seems to make a mockery of all of those people that come out every week clapping and rattling their hands. I'm not talking about the people on Westminster Bridge, but the people that come out clapping and rattling their pots and pans. I see them outside my door every week, and everybody stands out there. And it's sort of making a mockery of those people. It's making them seem like fools. It's sort of saying, you know what, NHS workers, they're expendable. Now, I've got friends and colleagues.
Well, I don't quite know that it does that, James, does it?
Well, I think, look, I've got some very dear friends, close friends that work in the NHS, and one of whom I'm thinking specifically, I won't name them, they've got a daughter that's working in the front line, and she goes out, and I know how concerned he is about his daughter's life. Now, if I was him, I'd be livid right now.
I get that.
But going back to my earlier point, to the last message that you read out, which I thought was fascinating.
Wasn't it?
I'm just starting to wonder as well. Perhaps he's was it deliberate? Did he do this? Is he trying to perhaps rally the deniers and those people sitting on the fence in some sort of strange way to sort of force the debate about returning to work a lot quicker than we want?
No, I don't think, James, it's a great theory, but I don't really think so. I don't really think so because he's at a point now where, frankly, his future career in Number 10 is on the line, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, I don't see how he can come back from that. I mean, just absolutely disgraceful behaviour, really. I mean, like I say, shocking. I mean, I'd be furious if I had people whose lives were sort of being put on the line every day. I really would. And it's a shame we're not hearing more from those people calling in instead of hearing the likes of. I mean, that person Craig who phoned up earlier. I mean, is he a biological experiment that sort of Dominic Cummings sort of created? He's almost like a mini, like Dominic Cummings.
Well, James, I wanted. Because this is a really big moment this is a very big moment in Boris Johnson's premiership, all right? It really is.
Yeah.
Nobody listening to this now underestimate this. And I wanted you to hear both sides of the argument. So you've got everything.
Of course.
You've got everything from Westminster Digital to the Sunday Mirror. So I hope, James, that we're getting both of the arguments.
Absolutely.
You can help make your own mind up, But James, if you were Boris right now, how would you handle this? Would you? If you were Boris, would you go out there at 4:00 today and front this?
Absolutely. He's the leader. He should be. It's incredible that he's been so sort of non-visible. I mean, I find that astonishing.
And do you think he will, James?
That put out. I think I suspect he might, because I think he's under such pressure. Not just about Dominic Cummings, but I think this reflects so poorly on his and says so much about a lack of leadership that he'd be a fool not to.
Okay. James, thank you very much indeed for your call. Great chat. And I want to say this. To the Prime Minister directly. Boris Johnson, you need to be there at 4:00 today. Sure, it won't be easy. There are going to be tough questions, but you've got a rebellion going on within your own side. On Twitter, Steve Baker tells me that WhatsApp groups are pinging with messages from MPs from all wings of the party calling for Cummings to go. Now, look, that's what Paul Brand, ITV political correspondent, put out 10 minutes ago. And all right, Steve Baker, he may be talking his own book in the sense that he was the first to come out and declare. But if there's even a whisper of truth in that, this is not just a crisis now for Dominic Cummings. It is a real crisis of authority for the Prime Minister over his own party. Many in the country saying, where the hell is our leader? We know he's been ill. He needs to be there at 4:00 today. He really, really, really does. It's 11:45. Time for the news.
Coming up at 12 on LBC. Imagine
is to try and stop Huawei, that telecoms company that I think, well, frankly, it's just the Chinese Communist Party, really, anyway, isn't it? To stop them being involved in our 5G network. I don't want it from a security perspective, and I can't see why we should want to upset so many of our friends around the world. And indeed, Tony Abbott, the former Australian Prime Minister, writing in the Mail on Sunday today, saying really the UK's got to rethink its relationship with China. There was on Friday an announcement that the government are going to scale back plans for Huawei within the 5G network by phasing them out from 2023. That's a big shift of position for Boris Johnson, who instinctively is very pro-China. But it's not good enough. It's not the sort of halfway house, throw a bit red meat, to those who were worried about this because 38 Tory MPs rebelled when this came before the Commons. But it is a step in the right direction. However, even though that is one of those big decisions, the Prime Minister decided to let them into the network. It's upset the Americans, the Australians, the Canadians, the Japanese, many of his own party. But this particular call over what to do about Dominic Cummings is an even bigger decision. And this could well prove to be a very pivotal moment in how Boris Johnson is seen to govern this country. Is Cummings going? Dominic Cummings has just been seen going into number 10 Downing Street, reports Rob Powell from Sky News. On a Sunday morning, he's been summoned. The boss has summoned him. And I'm guessing. But I'm guessing the question is, did you go back to Durham for a second or a third time? Please tell me the truth. I'm guessing that's the conversation going on inside number 10 now. Let's keep our callers going. Let's go to Rick in Whetstone, a new caller. Good morning, Rick.
Hello, Nigel. When I would have expected my first call to you to be full of thanks and congratulations.
Yep.
But what's happening now with Dominic Cummings is all about Brexit. It's about killing Brexit.
Yes.
And
I know, Rick. I know, and I hate it. But he's given them the opportunity.
It's trivia. You walk anywhere into central London, you'll see policemen walking shoulder to shoulder. All over the country, this lockdown, or let's say social distancing, is being broken. The idea that one man taking his 4-year-old kid because he saw up close Boris Johnson going downhill, he did not want his child in the house while they were whatever Boris Johnson was doing at that stage. He sent them off to the grandparents. He's just showing again to have been a thinking, caring person who just gets on with the job, and he's efficient and he's competent, and that's why they want to get rid of him. And so I'd say to all the people out there who are not supporting Dominic Cummings, if you don't support him, you're going to lose Brexit, because they're just picking away at it one at a time to break it down so they can do the extension, undermine Boris Johnson and get rid of the lot of them.
Rick, I want it. Listen, of course I want Dominic Cummings to be in position on July the 1st. So we've passed that date and we've said there's no extension to transition. But
1st of January.
Well, 1st of July, actually.
I know, but I'm saying I want him there till 1st of January.
Well, okay, either way, Rick, I want him there until we're absolutely done and dusted with this, all right? We've left the political bit. We now need to leave the rule book. But don't you think, Rick, he has just given such ammunition, not just to the Labour Party or the Sunday Mirror, but you're now seeing Tory MPs taking that view. He's made a mistake. Rick, he's made a mistake, hasn't he?
I think he's done something what any decent, but it's a bit like parents moving house to get their children into a good school. All power to their elbow. I think that people that are doing the right thing for their children is the sort of country I want to live in. And you didn't mention the mainstream media, because we know in this country not to trust the mainstream media. Now, I'd love to know what goes on at LBC that turns you into this sort of position, because it is really sort of...
No, I've got no position, Rick. I've got no position. I had the police knock on my door when I was doing my job. All right, But I do think, Rick, that if you're at the top of the tree, instructing people, stay at home apart from essential journeys, and that includes, by the way, childcare, only to travel with a child, right, for alternative childcare was said by Jenny Harris only to be in extreme circumstances, all right? What I am saying, Rick, is that if you're seen to be above the law, you're in real trouble. And I haven't been told by anybody, I should think, that. I think common sense tells me that.
Well, a quote from Boris Johnson I think is great. I hope it gets out there. Is, I didn't think it would be so easy to take away people's freedoms and so difficult to give them back.
No, I know.
The people that are trying to stop him giving back the freedoms, which would have allowed Dominic Cummings...
I tell you what, Rick, listen to this. Rick, listen to this. Right, Janet from Brighton has just sent a message in. After Cummings being allowed to visit his parents during lockdown, I now plan to drive 100 miles to stay with my mum, who I haven't seen for months. You see, actually, Rick, what this story does, it blows apart completely any authority the government have got on continuing lockdown. That's the problem, isn't it?
The people that are blowing apart is Keir Starmer. You've got in Waterloo Station.
No. Forget Keir Starmer. Forget Keir Starmer. He's not in government. His job is to ask questions, right? This is about the authority. Rick, can't you see that what's happening here is the authority of the government is melting before our eyes?
It melted the minute they were bulldozed into this lockdown in the first place.
All right, Rick, you've got very strong views. You argue them well. I'm going to move on, though. Other callers, loads of other callers want to have a say. Let's go to John in South Woodford. John, good morning.
Good morning to you.
So, does he stay or does he go?
Well, look, setting that aside for a sec, because I'll make a non-political point here, first of all.
Sure.
You've had quite a lot of callers talking about media witch hunts and media frenzies.
Yes.
What do people expect that the media should do in circumstances like this?
Well, that's a
in
good
essence,
point. Yeah.
This is a very, very good story and a very important story. Any news organisation which failed to report it, investigate it, ask questions about it, would be failing in their duty. And that is what newspapers and the television are for, to report news. And this is news, very important news.
Fair enough.
It strikes me that a lot of people who are very vociferous in sort of saying that they support our democratic way of life and our the institutions of that democratic way of life, which include a free media, they don't like it when it reports things that they don't like.
Well, of course. Now, John, you made that point. Please go on. What should Boris do now in this circumstance? Because the authority of the government, John, it is seriously brought into question, isn't it?
Absolutely, but I think he and Cummings are brazen enough to brazen it out. And if he were to be on TV this afternoon, I mean, let's face it, having made those points about the media, it is true that the majority of Fleet Street is on his side. And if he came out and spoke about this, it would largely be reported on tomorrow's front pages
Positively.
as Boris comes out fighting.
Yeah, I know.
And they'd get away with it that way, But you're absolutely right to say that the fundamental point here is that it doesn't matter whether police, like your last caller said, policemen are strolling along together in London. They're not making policy, are they? They're not the argument.
Absolutely.
So
what does your sense tell you, John?
Oh, I think they'll brazen it out. Yeah.
And you think they'll do it and survive it, and the rebellion within the party won't become bigger. Interesting. John, thank you very much. One last caller this morning. It's going to be Kate in Islington, a new caller. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning, Nigel. I never thought I'd ever agree with you on anything.
Well, there you are. Go on.
For everything. I just need to say that it's not so much what the couple have done, which in itself was bad enough, but the support from government is taking us all for idiots. It's talking to us as though we didn't really understand the lockdown, and that actually, if we felt the need, if we personally felt the need, we could drive 260 miles with the virus across the country if we felt that was necessary. That was never the rules, and we understand that. We know that. They can't now rewrite the rules to safeguard Dominic Cummings. And on to your point about killing Brexit, I don't think everything is about Brexit. I don't think it should be.
Well, it's not everything, Kate, but it is, you know, I mean, there's a very important few weeks coming up.
There is. I don't think we can kill Brexit, and I'm a Remainer, so I don't think we can do it. We're going, we're out. That's it. That's finished. This is about something bigger than Brexit, if you like. This is about your last caller, bar last, saying, I want to live in a country where people do right by their children. I want to live in a country where people do right by all of our children and don't risk infecting our children in order to keep their child safe. I want to look at what Mary Wakefield's article said, that states she had a headache and was a bit breathless and was sometimes
just Kate, just quickly,
I've had worse hangovers and the
Mary Wakefield,
like
of course.
that.
Mary Wakefield, of course, is Dominic Cummings' wife, and wrote about this in The Spectator, but omitted to tell us that they'd been up to Durham. And as for hangovers, well, I'm not going to compare notes, Kate. But Kate, thank you for your call. Thank you, everybody, a lot of you, for your call. So it's a really big moment somehow. Putting Grant Shapps out this morning, despite the fact the questions were pre-advertised on Sky News, and Shapps not having answers, is no way to run a circus. It does not work. At 4 o'clock this afternoon, somebody has to wrest back control of the ship, and they have to do it because of what George said to me earlier. I'll read it out again. I'll finish on this point. If someone from government can't tell me why Dominic Cummings gets to be above the law by the end of the day, I may just say screw the lockdown and drive to see my partner tomorrow morning for the first time since the start of lockdown. That is what Boris Johnson has to stop today. And an admission that Cummings made a mistake would actually help. We'll see what happens. I think 4 o'clock this afternoon is actually quite a big moment. Well, you've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'll be back tomorrow night. It's a bank holiday, if you didn't know. Many don't. I'll be back at 6 tomorrow. At 3 this afternoon, it's Ian Payne. Now, it's Majid Nawaz.
We say, and I ask you to say with us, lift up your voices in this great meeting in the heart of England. And to all the world, a message, England lives and marches on.